and Friends, the Iowa PBS Foundation.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams. Saints, LSU, Pelicans, Tulane, all on tap for us today. And of course, to break it down, two of the best we have. Guerry Smith of NOLA.com, Seth Lewis of WLAE-TV Sports. Both guys are on the panel today. Guys, welcome to the show. Seth, Guerry, good to have you. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving as well.
Same to you.
Thank you. We did. My son was in town, so we had a great time. Yeah, it was awesome. With that said, I want to get started with find a little bit about what you guys are doing at Channel 4. Tell us about all the great programming with Channel 4.
Yeah, look, it's never a boring moment, right? Between all of the hirings and firings and the Saints and the Pelicans maybe not being as great. But look, 4th Down on 4, me, Doug Mouton, Ricardo LeCompte, we continue to do great work with that. I should include Ross Jackson in that as well because he really is like the 4th member of our on-air team. And then also our Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show where we give a think with a drink. That's become my favorite segment, being able to drink on air. But I mean, look, we do a lot of really good work, and we really care about the product and how we present all of the great sports, high school, everything in New Orleans.
And of course, 4th Down Friday, also 4th Down on 4, all the specials that you get at Channel 4. I don't have to tell you to tune in. You're already tuning in. But again, Seth, thanks for coming down. Guerry, not too busy of a week for you.
No. And first of all, let me apologize for my voice, but trust me, anybody who heard me on Eric's radio show 2 weeks ago, I'm a lot better than I was then. I've had an issue for about 3 weeks going on now, but I think I'm on the good end of it. Yeah, just a few things. Better. I mean, as Tulane coach John Summerall said the other day, soon to be departed Tulane coach, this is insanity right now. It wasn't until Monday that it hit me that signing day yesterday. I'd done nothing on that, and suddenly I had to scramble to get something on that, along with coaching search and maybe the most important game in Tulane football history, all at the same time. So yeah, my plate's been full.
No doubt. And of course, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune.
Yep.
And where you can catch all the coverage of Tulane. You also, again, strings for the Associated Press at times, covering the Pelicans and Saints as well. We will start with Tulane for the first time in the history of this program, and rightly so with everything that's going on with Tulane. Poised to get into the college football playoffs, but the big news this week is John Summerall taking the job at the University of Florida. Tulane is in the midst of trying to figure out who's going to be their next head coach. Both these guys have covered University. Seth's covered Napier over at University of Louisiana, who ended up at Florida. Also, obviously, again, Summerall here. Guerry covered the University of Florida for years, and of course has covered Tulane as well. So there's a connection there. And of course, both guys obviously know what's going on with sports here, from LSU to Tulane, Saints, and Pelicans. We'll start with Summerall moving on to Florida. I'll start with Guerry. Guerry, your thoughts on this? Are you surprised this happened this year after just 2 years?
Yeah.
And then how quickly this happened behind the scenes of what was going on, where really it was kind of quiet.
Right. I'm not surprised that it happened this year because he considered it last year at North Carolina. If you'd asked me about the SEC schools that he was going to go to, Florida would not have been what I thought would be on the top of his list. But my colleague Jeff Duncan had talked to him a couple of months ago, and Sumrall had rated the SEC schools that he considered top tier and second tier, and he had Auburn and Ole Miss on the second tier, LSU and Florida on the top tier. So Johnson, I think he's really attracted to go to a place that had legendary coaches in Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer, and he's betting on himself. He feels like he can win big there, but it doesn't surprise. I think the capper for him was last year when basically Tulane's roster got ravaged. That's just tough to deal with as a coach. When you lose your top running back, your top quarterback, your top tight end, and you know that's going to happen every single year. He loves Tulane, but he wants to be somewhere that's a destination for top players instead of maybe what Tulane has been the last couple of years, a feeder. So I think that kind of cemented his decision that if he got an offer he felt like he couldn't refuse, that he would have to take it.
Seth, your thoughts on University of Florida? Some thought it would be Auburn. Okay, there was a lot of talk that if Kiffin, as he did leave for LSU, that he would be on the short list for Ole Miss as well. There was a lot of talk toward the end of last week, or when Kiffin was making a decision, that if ultimately he stayed at Ole Miss, that Sumrall might have been the choice for LSU as well.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting about his decision is he chose a university that he can win a national championship at, right? When he came to Tulane, he made it very clear that he had P4 offers. Honestly, them hiring John Sumrall in the first place was a little bit surprising because of the thought of, okay, his name, since he did so well at Troy, won 2 straight Sun Belt championships, that he was going to go for maybe a smaller P4 job and work his way up. But instead, he did it with Tulane, and it probably was a really smart decision for him because he was set up to have success in the American Conference, right? And so you look at, when you talk about like tiers, I think about schools in tiers too, especially when you talk about the SEC. And when you talk about a school like Florida hasn't won a national championship since 2008, I believe it is. But like, you still know that it's possible. You know the fertile recruiting ground that there is in Florida. We've seen Florida since 2008 make it to the SEC championship game a couple times. And it's also like, when you talk about schools in Florida, like Miami is the best school in Florida at the moment. But like, it wouldn't be surprising if all of a sudden Miami fell down a peck or two. Florida State is the school that's been reeling the most, right? And we're considering firing their coach. If Lane Kiffin would have accepted the offer, we know now. And so he knows that there's a fertile recruiting ground. He knows that there's talent. That is one thing that Billy Napier was able to do. He did bring talent to Florida. Like, that was a talented team. They didn't win, and that's a part of the problem, and that will get you fired. But there is talent there, and there is the ability to win. There is the chance to, like, put yourself into the college football playoff picture all the time. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised at all that he ended up going to Florida.
I want to stay with Napier for a moment because, again, there was a lot of, fire up in Florida about the possibility of taking a G5 coach. And a lot of that had to do with, again, Napier failing. Again, I heard you talking on 4th Down and 4 about it. Talk about, again, your thoughts, the difference between Napier, Sumrall, and the job at the University of Florida.
Yeah, so the first thing I pointed out was that they do have one thing in common to me, which is from being around both, they seem to get the people part right. Like when you talk to people at UL, like assistant coaches or support staff, things of that nature, they all raved about him, and it didn't seem fake. It didn't seem like they were just saying that. Like, I'm talking about like going out and getting drinks with people and you know, and them saying like, man, he treats us like really well. And Sumrall is the same way, but they are very different. When you talk about someone like Sumrall is a little bit more of a field guy. When you talk about Napier is a little bit more of like analytics. Like, he believes in sticking to the sheet 100% of the time. And when you talk about someone like Sumrall, like he's someone who is gonna go with the flow versus with Napier. The way I would compare it is like he's almost robotic, like Saban. So I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that like that was kind of the way that he was. Whereas like, and like talking to him in a press conference, it was very like coach speak. Summerall, you don't know what Summerall is going to say.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And that keeps it interesting. But I also think that like in Louisiana, in the South, like that resonates so well. You look at like game 1 against Northwestern and being like, hey, look, we felt disrespected by them not letting us wear that uniform. We don't know if that was like a Jordan type disrespect, but like those are the type of things that like people will rally behind, not only in Louisiana but in Florida too.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, that's a great point. Summerall totally gets it on every level. That's huge. Now, look, it's not a slam dunk because nobody going to the SEC in the state it's in now, with adding Oklahoma and Texas in that league, it's hard to win in the SEC. And it wasn't a popular choice in Florida. I think he won over some people on media day there, but you got to win games to really win over people. I do think he's inheriting, like he's a better situation than people think. It reminds me, I covered Florida under Ron Zook, which was a debacle. It wasn't quite as bad as the Napier era in terms of record, but it was the same type thing. But Ron Zook recruited really well too, and when Urban Meyer came in, he inherited a team ready to win, and he had to add some key Tim Tebow, Percy Harvin, key parts, but the players were there to win, and I think that's true now. It's not. Florida had a losing record under Billy Napier. It's not a roster that is a losing record type team. So Summerall has a chance because he's going to be if they lose a few games early next year, it's going to be the first time he's really had any criticism in his entire coaching career. He was a beloved assistant everywhere he went. He goes to Troy, immediately wins a conference championship. This is a different situation. I think he's got the personality and the makeup to handle it. But we'll see. And and I agree. Billy Napier, very robotic in a lot of ways. Summerall, as he said, you don't know what he's going to say. He's a totally different person from Steve Spurrier, who I covered there the whole time. But there is some similarity in that Summerall says whatever the heck he thinks he wants to say, which Spurrier did too, and it makes it fun.
Of all of the head coaches I've covered, I want to say Summerall's at the top of the I go grab a beer with that guy list. Like that is, and when you talk to players too, you can just tell how much they would like rally behind him, which is really cool.
Right. I'm on the record on the radio show, and this show is saying I didn't think Florida was going for a G5 coach because of the Napier situation. It really shocked me about how quickly he moved up, and again that as soon as he was available, again they went right after.
Yeah, well, they really wanted Lane Kiffin. That was the deal. In fact, my source, the people I know that worked there, thought he was like a lock for Florida just 2 weeks ago. So that's how things changed. But again, it's very unusual for a school to go the same route that just failed, and that's another testament to Summerall. He's so different. He wins. He walks in a room, he wins the interview, he wins over people immediately, and that's clearly what happened. Because it's not just that he's another G5 coach; he's another G5 coach from Louisiana.
That was exactly what I was going to say. He's another G5.
And they knew they were going to take a hit when they announced it at first, but what he said in his opening press conference is what he truly believes: winners win, and I'm a winner. And he projects that attitude the second he walks into a room.
And I don't know if you believe this too, but when he says to us on Tuesday, I wasn't leaving Tulane unless it was a top 10 job in the country, I do believe him.
I believe that as well.
To a degree, you know what I mean? Mind you, Auburn might not be a top 10 job.
Was North Carolina a top 10 job?
Well, North Carolina was.
In general, I agree with the principle. He's not. He loves Tulane. He cares about Tulane. He was interested in North Carolina's job last year. Let's just put it.
He was.
If they hadn't offered it to Bill Belichick, I think we might be talking about John Summerall as a one-year coach at Tulane.
Yeah. So I mean, and so that's a good point. I think that probably when he first got to Tulane, he wasn't thinking, okay, I could leave in a year, right? And then North Carolina comes up, and maybe some of that also was like some jostling for things, indoor facility, things of that nature at Tulane, right? And Auburn, which is what I believed, at least when it first was happening and talking with friends.
I agree with you.
I think he's going to end up at Auburn.
Yeah.
Auburn is probably not a top 10 job in the country.
I think he feels that way too. But
Auburn is a place, unlike Ole Miss, where we've seen in the modern era that they can win. You know what I mean? Like now it's going to be sometimes in between a lot of the success at Alabama maybe, but like you can win at Auburn. So yeah.
And I will say one other thing. Summerall's an absolutely terrific coach, but boy does he owe a lot to Jake Retzlaff this year.
Man,
he doesn't get the Florida job if Tulane isn't in the conference championship game, and Tulane ain't in the conference championship game if Jake Retzlaff had fallen into their lap right before the season started.
And the funny thing is, if you kind of look at how the standings shook out.
Yeah.
The way that the teams fell is kind of how the jobs fell when it came to like where people landed. Now you could argue maybe that Oklahoma State a better job than Auburn, but like at the same time, like Oklahoma State, if you can turn that thing around, you have way less opposition at Oklahoma State than you do at Auburn. So you could argue that could be the second best job of those jobs. So yeah, it's just funny. Memphis's coach goes to Arkansas, and everybody would put Arkansas as the last in the pecking order of the coaches that went from the AAC or from the American now to P4.
Goes to show you again what the American is kind of again the next step to again a Power 4 conference when you start talking about coaches and players as well. When you start about that. All right, let's talk about who replaces Sumrall. Everybody believes Blake Baker is the guy that most people want at Tulane, but there's been talk about Shannon Dawson, the Miami offensive coordinator. Chris Hampton, who was at Tulane as a co-defensive coordinator, I believe. He's at Oregon's co-defensive coordinator now. Yeah. He was a defensive back coach at Tulane, right?
He was the defensive coordinator in the last 2 years. Yes.
Will Hall, formerly of USM, a former head coach. Billy Napier, who we were speaking about. Slig Nagel, who was here with Willie Fritz, Jerry Mack out of Kennesaw, Charles Huff of USM, Willie Simmons, FIU, Ed Ogeron. Out of that list, Gary, I'll go with you first. Who's the top guy? Who's the fallback guy?
I believe Blake Baker is the top guy. This is not, again, when John Sumrall was hired, I knew exactly what was happening from the beginning of the process to the end. It's not quite that case this time, but from all I'm hearing, I think Blake Baker is the front runner. Yes, preferably you want a coach that has head coaching experience, but you want the best coach. And one of the keys at Tulane is you have to know how to recruit to Tulane. That is absolutely pivotal because it's just not the same. It's not, Sumrall knows it wasn't the same as when he was recruited at Troy, but he had spent 3 years under Curtis Johnson's staff at Tulane. And had been a great recruiter in that he knew exactly what it took. Blake Baker played at Tulane from 2000 to 2004. Hey, he was a member of the one Tulane team that won more than 7 games in between 1999 and 2022. in 2002, he knows the lay of the land. His results are unimpeachable. Missouri was a terrific defense. I wouldn't say LSU's been a terrific defense, but he inherited a complete mess, horrendous defense that wasn't even in the top 100, and immediately made it good. And so to me, the only box he doesn't check is, has he been a head coach before? None of these guys, John Sumrall was a slam dunk. If they were able to convince him to come, you kind of knew what was going to happen. I don't think any of these candidates are the same, but to me, Blake Baker's at the top of the list.
And I would argue that LSU had a terrific defense this year because as bad as LSU's offense was, it kept them in most games. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you're talking about a cornerback in Mansour Delane who's like up for the defensive back of the year. Like that usually doesn't happen for teams that have the records that LSU has. I think Blake Baker would be a great choice based on the way that he's led those defenses. Like Missouri, like nobody thinks about Missouri, at least when he was there at first. Nobody thought of Missouri as like a real threat, but like that was the beginning of it. That was the beginning of what Missouri has kind of built over the last few years, was like Blake Baker's defense. Then he comes back to LSU, and like you said, he inherited a terrible defense that got smoked by Ole Miss just a year prior, and it wasn't great at first, but this year it's like it's funny how football works sometimes, because if you combine the 2023 offense, I guess that would be, with this defense. I mean, that team is undefeated and like easily wins a national championship with Jaden Daniels and like all of those offensive weapons. Like that's how good this defense was this year, and he just needs a chance to lead. And him being a guy who went to Tulane, knows what it means. I also think too, because the other person that I've made a lot of arguments for is Billy Napier, because of like obviously him being in UL, him knowing the Louisiana landscape when it comes to recruiting. I mean, part of the reason why he didn't work at Florida was because he brought a staff that was mostly Louisiana to Florida, right? So like he knows and has a lot of good relationships, I believe, still in the state. But when it comes to Blake Baker and like him knowing the beat of it, I think that's what's most important.
Yeah. Okay, Baker did interview with Memphis. He's making a lot of money at LSU as a defensive coordinator. Tulane has a ceiling on what they can pay their coach. Do you think that will work out in terms of the money? How big is Memphis in this situation?
Yeah, I don't think, from what I've heard, I think Memphis is more leaning towards Charles Huff. I think Charles Huff is a better fit for Memphis.
Okay.
Memphis is not the greatest academic institution in the world. He's coached at Marshall. He's at Southern Miss. There's some parallels going on here. And I think that just makes more sense for him. And I know he's also, and the people I know that cover Memphis feel like he's the front runner right now for that. I mean, certainly a possibility for Tulane, but I think that's the way it's going. One of the names you mentioned earlier that made total sense to me, I put it on my original search, I've learned is not a candidate, is Shannon Dawson for whatever reason. I don't think he's interviewed.
So he's not interviewed?
I don't think he's interviewed. I can't swear to that, but from what I've been told, that's not somebody that they're looking at. And Chris Hampton, I don't think is a legitimate candidate either.
Well, who's the backup here then? If it's not Baker,
probably I would guess Napier would be my guess on that front.
Yeah. I mean that would be. I don't have a real good guess at it, but that would be who my pick would be.
Makes sense to me.
Because and the other thing that I think, like, because I've heard people say, like, if Blake Baker is hired, then like maybe he stays for longer than 2 years, right? Like maybe he's not a forever hire, but he's someone that stays a little bit longer before jumping to the next job. I also think for Blake Baker or for Billy Napier, one of the selling points would be, hey, and they probably have a better idea, we're going to try to jump to the ACC at some point. We're going to try to jump there in 2 years or 3 years, and we want you to guide us into this new era of Power 4 football. And I think that's another thing that could be really attractive for like anybody that's getting hired at Tulane. And like for somebody like Baker, who is an alum, like how cool would that be to do that when that eventually happens?
And you mentioned the salary situation. I've never been good on knocking down salaries, but I'm pretty clear to me. Summerall was making a base of $3 million at Tulane. I think Baker was making 2.5 at LSU. As long as it's not a drop or the same, if he wants to be a head coach. And look, Tulane has a lot to sell right now. The stat I unearthed yesterday, Tulane's been in the college football playoff rankings at some point of each of the last 4 years. There's only 9 other schools in the country that have been in that case. 5 of them are SEC schools, and another is Ohio State. So we're talking the blue bloods of the sport. Tulane has joined that list. You can win at Tulane, and Tulane has become a kingpin in the American Conference, and that's a huge factor. It's just a really attractive job right now.
To what I said on 4th down on 4, the biggest thing that I think Summerall has done, really no matter what the result is Friday, is he has made Tulane the best job in the group of 5 right now. Like before, you could maybe think like it was a flash in the pan, like okay, they had the Cotton Bowl and then they followed it up the next year with their quarterback, and the running back was really good, but like they're gonna come back to average. Like now this is, to me, clearly the best job in the group of 5.
And again, this year was the key year because they lost everything. I mean, they returned 2 offensive starters, and they were both offensive linemen. They lost so much on this roster, and I mentioned obviously getting Retzlaff was huge, but the job that he did bringing in guys in the portal with the returning players to get this team back to the championship game and host it is tells you how you can win at this school now.
And we've heard him talk about maturity for this group, and like this group needing to become more mature. Like we've seen it. The results haven't always been the prettiest. And I think that is what speaks to how good of a coaching job he did this year, because there was a lot of different times that I could think about this season where it could have gone left against Army, against ECU, and then you're sitting here and not in the championship game, and you're probably not at Florida either.
Right. Let's talk championship game, which again is the big thing for Tulane right now, outside finding another coach. All right, North Texas American Championship Friday, 7 o'clock at Yeoman. Guerry, I'll take you first. It's going to be raining, and the weather's going to be bad, and someone was asking for that as well. That could slow North Texas down. They got a heck of an offense.
Summerall said it. I'm not sure it really helps that much. I mean, North Texas is averaging over 200 rushing yards a game in the second half of the season. Their freshman running back was the only unanimous first-team selection in the entire conference. He has scored 16 touchdowns in the last 4 games. There are 6 running backs in the country who've scored more than 5 that have scored more than 16 touchdowns all year long. And that's not even the best part of their offense. So I'll say this, for most of the year, I was skeptical of North Texas because they didn't play a single P4 school.
Right.
They had a pretty easy schedule in the conference, and they were beating up on bad teams. But at some point, it's a skill to score 50-plus points every single week, no matter who you're playing. Tulane couldn't do it.
Right.
Tulane didn't do it against the same teams that North Texas was doing. So they're alone. I personally think the wrong team is favored in this game because North Texas is favored by 2.5 points and Tulane is the host. But it's a very dangerous team that Tulane's facing.
Your thoughts on North Texas?
Dangerous. they're scary. I mean, and I think that, as the season has gone on, Drew Mestamaker has become one of the greatest stories in college football this season. I mean, you're talking about a kid who didn't start in high school. Yeah. I believe his starting quarterback is at Louisville right now. And he came to North Texas as a walk-on, was like a 4th string, 5th string guy. Last year, worked his way up to being the backup, then I believe started the bowl game, came into this year, and now he leads the country in passing. You know what I mean? And he's going to most likely after this season, I would bet money on he's going to enter the transfer portal. Might follow them to Oklahoma State. I feel pretty good about that, unless there's an even better program that comes along and says, hey, son, we'll toss you however much money it is, and come here and come win. But I mean, that offense, to say that not only he leads the country in passing, the running back leads the American in rushing. They have the top receiver in the American. I mean, this is going to be a daunting task, and outside of Ole Miss, there could be an argument that there isn't a tougher test that they will have faced this year.
I'm going to throw a little cold water on that last statement because they are good, and I said I was skeptical this year. They've played 3 teams that won more than 6 games this year. They didn't put up any of those They put up good numbers. They played Navy. Navy went 7-1. They handed Navy the 1 in conference, but they only won 31-17. They didn't win 58-24. South Florida came in, biggest game in North Texas home history, their first sellout. South Florida turns the ball over 3 times in the first quarter, gets down, wins 63-36, and forced 5 turnovers in that game. And then they played Western Michigan, which is now in the championship game of the MAC early in the year. They had to go to overtime to beat them, I think, 33-30. So they're really good, but they're beatable. They're not. They've been unbeatable. They're unbeatable against teams that they're better than. That's been clear. But when they've played teams that can actually somewhat physically match up with them, they've been in a dogfight in all 3 games. And I think Tulane is a better football team than Navy. Tulane's definitely a better football team than Western Michigan. I don't know if Tulane's a better football. South Florida, I think, was the most talented team in the league. How they didn't make the conference championship game. Where did Alex Golesh go? He went to Auburn. They may be finding out that might not be a great choice because I have no idea how that team, which I watched against North Texas, they could have beaten North Texas 80-something if they hadn't turned the ball over 3 times in the first quarter. But so I don't think this is a game where Tulane's just going to get blown off the field. I don't think that's a scenario at all. This is going to be a tight game.
No, and I think Tulane's going to come into this game obviously very focused, knowing what's on the line, but also I can't get out of my head how they've looked at times. That's probably the reason why I'm not as confident in Tulane, is just because we've seen, we've been waiting for them. It's like that moment, the click, and you could say maybe Memphis, but then there's still been
the second half of that game they didn't play well either. I will say Tulane's defense has played a lot better at home. They played 15 points a game they've given up in 6 home games. They held Northwestern to 3. Northwestern does not have a great offense. Duke. It looks like Duke had a lot of yards. Duke never had the ball with a chance to tie after the first quarter of that game. It was a totally misleading final. East Carolina, which went 6-2 in the league, Tulane shut them out in the first. That was the game where Tulane's offense was just abysmal in the red zone, or they would have blown them out. So they've played a lot better. The Tulane road defense, I think, if this game were in Denton, if it hadn't been for the College Football Playoff Committee ranking Tulane ahead of North Texas, I think Tulane would be in a lot of trouble. But at home, this defense has played a lot better than it has on the road, and I think that's key. But he's right. Tulane has not looked like a great team for almost at any time this year, but they've got really good players. And I also think that loss, and my feature, you can read it at NOLA.com later today, that loss to Army the guys that came back, they were so humiliated by that performance. That's been burning. They've been burning with desire to get back to this chance because they don't want to ever feel what they felt again in that game, and they're going to play with unbelievable intensity just because they're still sick about the way their effort level and the way they played at Army last year.
Final word.
Nationally, there's been some controversy about North Texas not being ranked above Tulane because they are ranked above them in the AP and the coaches poll. I do think that the College Football Playoff Committee got that right based on how tough of a schedule Tulane has played. And now you literally might have a win against the ACC champions after this week.
Yeah.
Early signing period ends on Friday. We really, again, won't know what's happening there. So far, Tulane has been able to hold on to their class, which is, again, exceptional. And Florida as well. Florida actually turned an LSU commit to Florida up with Summerall. So, again, we'll touch more on that next week. All right, guys, one last question on the coaching search. Most people think it's going to be done by Friday.
Yeah.
You guys believe that?
I'm hearing it could even be done later today as a possibility, but it will be done this week. I think when the actual announcement comes, though, depends on what the result of the game is Friday. Right. If they lose, I think we may be having an announcement sooner than if they win, because if they win, then there's a selection show for the playoffs on Sunday and all of that. But in terms of the actual decision making, yes, I think it'll be done by tomorrow.
And I believe that the announcement will probably come Saturday no matter what. No matter if they win or lose, I think that they should allow Friday to be just championship only, and then Saturday they'll announce the coach, and then Sunday, obviously, if they win, they'll figure out where they're going, and you can kind of give everything its just due.
Right. If they lose, does Summerall coach the bowl game?
No chance.
You didn't even point at me. No.
Okay. I don't think so. No. I want to throw that out there.
There's not even a think so.
There you go. All right, we will take a break here. We'll hear from our underwriters. We come back. We'll touch on we'll get on LSU. We're probably just going to touch on the Saints and Pelicans today because that's what they deserve. But we'll get an LSU, Lane Kiffin, and all that encompasses again that I don't want to call it a circus, but that particular again coaching change. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Seth Lewis, also Guerry Smith, I'm Eric Asher. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Guerry Smith and Seth Lewis are our guests. We will turn to LSU. Again, finished season 7-5, 3-5 in the SEC. They are bowl eligible, but the big story this week is they got their man. Lane Kiffin is the new head coach at LSU, trying to be able to try to coach Ole Miss through the college football playoff. That didn't work on Ole Miss's end. Obviously, LSU's kind of happy about it now because they got their coach on campus. Seth, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on this hire? Most people thought he was the number one guy. A lot of people thought that that it would be between LSU and possibly Florida for his services. Maybe Ole Miss could keep him there. I kind of thought that Ole Miss was kind of out of the mix just from a monetary standpoint. But your thoughts on the hire?
Well, there's a lot to think about, right? I think that when Brian Kelly was first fired, and you start to bring names up, right? Names like his, names like maybe Marcus Freeman or Dan Lanning, no matter how outlandish or whatever, the thing that I kept saying is there's going to have to be a coach in this college football landscape, in where, National Signing Day is on Wednesday. There's going to have to be a coach that looks at his playoff team, right, and says, hey, I love you, I believe in you, but not that much. right? Like there's gonna, like I really appreciate this run that we made, but I think I have a better chance building this other thing up than staying here and seeing this thing through. And it's not surprising that Lane Kiffin was the first one to take that chance and to do that. And I hope that the calendar moves itself in a different way, because like it is unfortunate for like Ole Miss and for those players that like they won't have their head coach. And I'm sure they're going to galvanize behind Pete. But like it is unfortunate. And look, LSU got their guy. I think more than anything else, what was most important about this hire is that it showed that LSU had not gone down a peg, because there was so much chatter after Brian Kelly got fired. We don't even have to get into all of the chatter, but there was so much chatter, and from so many people that probably shouldn't have even been involved in the search. So there was a lot of questions about, is there alignment at LSU? Will coaches want to come into this distraction, into this mess, into this chaos? Now, Lane Kiffin is chaos in his own right? But he's also a really good coach. You know what I mean? And to say that, I mean, in the last 5 years, Ole Miss has won 50 games. Ole Miss in the history of their program has never won that many games over 5 years. Now, it's fair to say as well that like when they won national championships in the 1960, 1962, whatever it was, they weren't playing 12 games with a bowl game and everything else, right? But it's still to say, in the history of Ole Miss, they've never had a 5-year stretch of the amount of wins as that. And then they've had 4 10-win seasons during that stretch. Ole Miss has 11 total in the history of its program. You know, his offense is something that it doesn't matter what quarterback you insert into it, it's going to be successful most of the time. Like you look at Jackson Dart, like we weren't even sure about him going to the NFL because it's like, okay, well, he was just a quarterback in Lane Kiffin's system. And like, is he really going to fit it? And he's looked okay at New York so far. This year, they bring in a dude from Division II who's their backup, who was heading to Temple if it wasn't for Ole Miss. That's where he was going to go at first. And then Ole Miss is like, hey, come and be our backup. They insert him in, and he looks incredible against Tulane, against LSU, and then obviously, you know, he's still done really well throughout the season. It's not going to be boring. That's what I don't know if it's going to be successful per se, but for however long that Lane Kiffin is the head coach at LSU, it will not be boring times.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. I think, first of all, Lane Kiffin has done a tremendous job at Ole Miss. His record was a little more checkered before he went to Ole Miss. He has personal demons. We can talk, if he can control those demons and coach like he did in the last 2 years at Ole Miss, he's going to be a great hire for LSU. I'm not convinced. There's a lot more. There's a lot more going on at LSU. At Ole Miss, that was a perfect situation for him in a kind of a way. He has to keep the laser focus and do what he's done the last couple of years. And I will say, I have a couple of concerns, but obviously I think it was a good hire. His quarterback who did so great this year wasn't even his starter at the beginning of the year, and the guy in front of him couldn't hit the broadside of a receiver during games when he was in there. I mean, and so it makes me wonder. Granted, this guy was from Division II, Chambliss, but I don't understand how they could have watched these two guys play after seeing him play the rest of the year. And I think they had no. It wasn't like they thought he was this type of player. Or he would have been the starter right away. But so again, the key for him is just keep laser focused, not let his own personal distractions get in the way at LSU. And if he does that, they'll be in good position.
Staff. Obviously, again, there's a lot of people that want holdovers on that staff. They want Frank Wilson to be there because, again, his ties to Louisiana recruits, what he's done for LSU. He bleeds LSU. Corey Raymond's another guy. Again, he leaves. The defensive backs go down. All of a sudden, he's back. DBU is back. Obviously, that helps when you have a lot of money in the transfer portal to bring in the best corners and safeties. But at the same time, he's an excellent recruiter as well. How do you think the staff shakes out?
Yeah, so I think that offensively, he's going to bring in a lot of guys. I do think that Frank Wilson will end up staying because everybody doesn't realize this, but like Frank Wilson was an assistant under him the 1 year he was at Tennessee. You know what I mean? Like that was one of Frank's first 3 jobs in college. His first job in college was at Ole Miss under Ed Orgeron, who obviously Ed and Lane still maintain a really great relationship. So it seems like Frank would fit that, and I think that's important because of Frank's ties to New Orleans and Louisiana and a recruiter. And Frank cares about LSU. He cares about LSU more than most. And so, you'd hope that, he's held over. When you talk about Corey Raymond, and I mean, Corey Raymond was at Florida. Florida's defensive backfield did not look great. You know what I mean? So it's something about the Louisiana LSU sauce for Corey Raymond that's it was always a misfit with Billy. And so you expect or hope that he's somebody that's held over. But I think that there's also, you see some chatter from the fan base about oh man, the GM, like Austin Thomas is leaving, or like this person. And it's well, whenever a new head coach is coming in, they are coming in to make the thing better. They're not coming in to hold it together. They're coming in to make it better. Like when Ed Orgeron got promoted after Les Miles got fired, well, of course he kept a lot of the staff because he was on that staff, so he has those relationships. When Brian Kelly comes in and he pretty much clears house for the most part, brings somebody like Frank Wilson back in, right? It's that's because it had become a mess in that orientation, and he is there to make this thing different. Lane Kiffin is there to make this thing different. It may not turn around in 1 year. Everybody hopes for that. Everybody believes in that in this NIL era. That and you see it. A team can turn in 1 year, but that's not a guaranteed thing. And if LSU is 8-4 next year, Lane Kiffin shouldn't be held to the fire for the team going 8-4. He's gonna have to build it back up to a certain degree, but he's got some really nice pieces there right now that if he can keep those pieces, it's a nice foundation to build from.
I don't think the LSU fan base is going to be happy with 8-4, even in the first year.
It's okay.
But I mean, again, they're bringing Lane Kiffin in. They're thinking national championship. They're thinking 1-2 losses a year. They're thinking it's a 10-win team from now on. So we'll see how that plays out. Your thoughts on Kiffin? And also, again, his staff. Do you think that he's going to keep those Louisiana guys intact here?
Don't really know. We'll see. I will say this. One thing, anybody out there that still thinks that he's just an offensive coach and and that's what he cares about. No, he cares about winning more than anything else. And you've seen him. I've talked to people who've talked about how he's matured in that area. He used to be play as fast as you could all the time, no matter what the game is going on. He's changed now. He's gotten much better in his time at Ole Miss at playing to the game and the opponent and stuff like that. And one other thing, I keep hearing people act like their defense was trash this year. Granted, maybe I'm biased because I saw their game against Ole Miss, but Tulane's receivers couldn't get an inch of separation against. There's no other team Tulane played this year where their receivers could not get open at any time all game long. Obviously, he's not bringing his defensive coaches with him, but he had assembled a good defensive staff at Ole Miss. I don't care. I mean, in the SEC, you're going to give up some yards against teams, but he's definitely not a one-dimensional coach anymore.
No. And I mean, they're 11-1 for a reason. It's not just because their offense has been on fire, but it's been their defense has got it done when they needed to. I got to watch them in person against LSU. Now, LSU was hurting at that point, and Garrett Nussmeier was leaving a lot of balls short and things of that nature. But that defense still performed well in that game. LSU didn't do certain things, but that defense still performed well, and that defense has done good things throughout the season. So I agree with you that because he's an offensive guy, because of maybe some of the things in his past, it's so easy to say, okay, he's only focused on offense. But that's not true. He's definitely, we're not saying that he's trying to have a top 5 defense in the country, but he knows that defense is going to be very important to anything they're trying to do as far as making a deep run in the playoffs.
I think it's the perfect time for this marriage. He's 50 years old. He's been through a lot. I mean, we remember, again, when he was the Oakland coach, again, in his 30s, obviously the situation in Tennessee after leaving after 1 year, going to USC. I think he's grown as a coach, grown as a man. And I think when you look at this opportunity, he understands the opportunity that's in front of him and what he has in his back pocket as well, which is $30 million possibly of NIL money and the commitment of that on top of, again, the salary he's getting.
I will say one concern is the reaction of the Ole Miss players once he left, because players are almost always universal in supporting their coach.
Yes.
And boy, they've been all over social media basically just saying they didn't want him back and they're glad he left. So I agree. He's grown. He still has to grow some more. I think he learns from each mistake he makes, and he made a mistake the way he left Ole Miss, and he still has to work. He's still rough in some areas in the way he treats people.
And I wonder if some of that is not based on necessarily how he treated people versus how he let it fester.
You're right.
You know what I mean? Because like if I was a player on that team, and all week long, anything that anybody is talking about is this coaching search. Like, I don't know if Lane could have handled it any better per se, other than re-signing with Ole Miss. Like, if you were going to sign with LSU.
Yeah, because he couldn't change the timing of a lot of this stuff. He's getting blamed way too much for that. He didn't force LSU to try to hire him now. That's just the reality of the business.
And I actually think, too, that, like, if Ole Miss wouldn't have gave him the ultimatum, I almost think that there would have just been a timeline where every other team, including LSU, would have had to say, hey, look, we can't wait for you any longer. Like, we need to hire somebody and get somebody for signing day.
Transfer
portal. Like I think if Ole Miss didn't give him that ultimatum, then everybody else would have just had to bow out because of that. And I also think, though, that it's telling that Pete Carroll and Nick Saban and the other coaches that he spoke to, these great coaches, these coaches that have legacy and that understand legacy. They understand ramifications and what things mean. The fact that they both said in the middle of a potential playoff run, you have to take the LSU job, I think that speaks more to like even what they think as far as him being able to handle a move like that. And this move being necessary and being the best thing for him. I don't think they would have told him that if they felt like he needed to stay through that run with Ole Miss for the playoffs. Do
you have a feel on who will be the defensive coordinator if Baker's bolts for Tulane?
I don't have a good feel on it.
Yeah, I don't either, especially because obviously, what is it, Golding staying at Ole Miss, so we'll see how that plays out. I think everybody agrees it was the hire, right? It was a great hire, right? I mean, again, when you look at who was out there, they identified their man with all the chaos we saw early. They identified their man. Give Osberg a lot of credit. He went and got his man.
I'm not convinced it's going to work, but he was absolutely the guy they needed to hire at this time, considering the circumstances. And yeah, they were getting bashed for some good reasons nationally for the chaos that occurred after the Brian Kelly thing. And then it didn't matter at all because the guy they wanted, they got. So to heck with all of that.
And Penn State is sitting in a situation still where they fired their coach who had been pretty good and now they're still sitting there without it. All I know is if you watching The Bachelor, right? And there's 4 women, and you can only choose one, and you're picking the winner. And the guy gives the rose to the woman. That person is the winner of the show. Now they might get divorced a year later, right? But that person is the winner.
At the moment, that person is the winner.
At the moment, that person is the winner. LSU is the winner over Florida, Ole Miss, and apparently Florida State too. Right.
Which we have.
And so on that front alone, that makes it a great hire. We'll see if it is a great tenure.
And look, for me, and I think we talked about this, I don't think he's going for another college job. I think the next job is the pros. I think if he wins the national championship at LSU, maybe wins a second one if he gets a chance. I think at that point, again, he's Lane Kiffin. He doesn't stay in a place too long. I think he'll be looking at the pros because he wants to make up for what happened in the pros the first time around to show that he can be a pro coach as well. We'll see how that works out. But it's interesting, as you mentioned, the influence of Carroll and Saban on that decision. All right, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. 2-10, lost to Miami 21-17. They're at Tampa Bay this weekend. I'm not going to get real deep into the Miami performance. I just want to know the thoughts on how Shuck has performed overall since he's took over as the quarterback.
I like what I've seen from Shuck in a lot of different situations. I think that you see these flashes, especially his ability to navigate the pocket, because him coming out of Louisville, like that was maybe one of the biggest things was like, okay, when he faces pressure, he's gonna panic. You'd see like these 1 or 2 throws that would aggregate of like him like throwing it like underhand and it's an interception or something like that. And you know, there's been a lot of things maybe with Kellen Moore that could be criticized for this year. There's a lot of things that you could have questions about. But the one thing that maybe he's done the best is develop quarterbacks. The way that Spencer Rattler looked in those first games versus how he looked the previous year was night and day. Like, he was not the reason, outside of those last 2 games essentially that he played in, he was not the reason why they were losing games. The problem was because of the devoid of talent on this team, he was also not the reason why they were winning games, right? But like he was like far down the list of like, oh, okay, like he's the reason why the Saints got down big or why the Saints couldn't come back. He was missing like 1 or 2 throws, but those 1 or 2 throws are important when you need every single break in a game in order to win. And when you talk about Tyler Shuck, if you watched him at the beginning of camp, he was so far behind Spencer Rattler. Like it was, you could see the arm talent, but it was like, man, this kid needs work, and he needs to like sit back and watch. He's not ready. Like I remember there was a play during the preseason where he like threw it to Cesar Ruiz, and it's like, you can't throw it to 51.
That's right.
That's not allowed.
He's not.
And so like to watch the way that he's developed, to watch the way that he looked, obviously against Carolina, like that was the best showing.
Yes.
But he's shown these different flashes the second half against the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's done enough yet to say for sure he's your quarterback in 2026, but like if the draft was right now, I'm not sure if I would go with a quarterback at this moment. I think I would go with a different position.
I will say this, he is playing with less talent than Rattler was playing with. When you look at the trading of Shaheed, you look at the injuries in the backfield, you look at the injuries along the offensive line, he's having to do what he's doing now with less talent.
Yeah, and I'll say this, I'm not sold, I'm not either way, and I think it's so hard to judge because of what you just said. This team just isn't talented. They're in the bottom 6 of the NFL in almost every significant statistical category. It's hard to find whether you have the right guy or not, period. I do think his game against Charlotte was the best game any Saints quarterback has played since Drew Brees left. That was an outlier, obviously, because the other 2 performances were not at that level. He certainly showed potential. I think the jury's still out, but it certainly isn't ready to convict for him. And I had questions. The fact that he couldn't beat out Spencer Rattler at the beginning of the year, I had questions when he came in what the offense was going to look like. And to your point, he's now operating without Shaheed.
Yes.
He just doesn't have a lot to work with.
Not at all.
So he's keeping the discussion open, and he's going to have 5 more games to judge him. But it's just so hard to know whether a guy can really be a quarterback for a winning team when he's not surrounded by winning players.
And the 5 more games is a really important distinction because my belief is he has a chance to play the Saints out of even being in a position to consider a quarterback.
Yes.
You know a lot of winnable games left.
And there's a lot of winnable games left.
All of them, maybe not this week, but the last 4.
And to be honest, even this week, like you're going to Tampa, Tampa's reeling. Like this is the worst that Tampa's looked all season. They may have won last week, but Tampa's like from what they were at the beginning of the season to now is, I don't know if it's night and day, but it ain't great.
Right.
And you got Carolina, you got the Jets, you got the Titans, you got Atlanta again. Like those are all winnable games. Like Atlanta is definitely not somebody, they didn't look good against them in that first game in the Dome, but like that is not a team that is like you're unable to beat. And Tennessee and the Jets are really the 2 games where you should.
Well, Tennessee, I think, is the one team the Saints are definitely better than right now. I don't think you can say that about any other team in the league, but Tennessee, you can pretty much definitively say that.
Guys, I want to shift gears to Kellen Moore, and I talked about this on the radio show this week. The having to handle both jobs, the play caller, even though he's not the offensive coordinator, but the play caller on game day and trying to be a head coach is difficult, again, for a first-time head coach. I mean, you saw Peyton come in and really kind of handle it flawlessly. He has struggled, and really struggled in the first quarter where you would think that they would have a leg up. Remember, they're scripting plays in the first quarter. They're scripting plays that they've practiced all week long, and they can't seem to be able to get off in the first quarter without falling behind. Critique what you've seen out of Moore this year so far.
I think that he has a tough deck of cards, but he hasn't really done much with those cards either, if that makes sense. Like we know this is a rebuild. Like we know that this team doesn't have as much talent maybe as you would like. But there have been some things, like you mentioned, the first quarter and with scripting, like you would expect for some of that to like look better. the development, like I mentioned, of the quarterbacks, I think has been like one of the good things. His ability to play young players as well, like understanding like, hey, we're rebuilding this thing. Like their draft class up to this point has showed a lot of promise. You know, the biggest thing, and this was honestly like from meeting him and you know, from his like opening press conferences and whatnot, I always was curious if he had the temperament to be a head coach, right? Like he's such a nice, kind of soft-spoken guy. Like, how are you going to galvanize a group of, you know, 70 men or 65 men, whatever it is? And so I don't have a good idea yet if he's just an offensive coordinator that is a head coach, or if he truly is a head coach. But I also think that there are certain things that are going to be unfair to judge him on this year because of the lack of talent that is on the roster.
I mean, again, I start with the lack of talent. It's hard to judge anybody on that. There have been some concerns. The clock management, to me, yeah, he's a first-year coach, but to me, in history, you either have that or you don't as a head coach. And
I've never seen that get better.
Almost every game, there's something they're doing at the end of a half, and I'm like, why is he not calling a timeout here? Why are they running that play? That kind of stuff. That to me is almost the biggest concern. I agree with him. The personality, he doesn't act like a head coach. There's other guys that have been successful that don't. But to me, that's the single biggest concern is some of the game management stuff that, you know, the Chargers had a coach that was lambasted for that, and it never got fixed, and then they got rid of him, and now with Harbaugh, it's a totally different situation. To me, he definitely needs to get better at that in a hurry, because some of his clock management decisions are just plain out wrong. It's not like questionable; they're just wrong, and and to me, that shouldn't be an issue whether you're a first-year coach or not.
And that coach is not a Saints defensive coordinator.
Right. And almost like Loomis in a lot of cases, patient to a fault. You know, again, stayed with maybe Rattler a little longer than you should have. We see this week again bringing in Smith as the kicker when
56-yard field goal.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying this guy's going to come out and every field from now on, but you got
even though I would say I think that they stayed with Rattler exactly the amount of time that they should have. I think he needed that amount of games to develop. It's easy to say that now based on it, but it's like he needed time to watch, see things right, see things wrong, and then come in. I was thinking that his first start was gonna be after the bye week.
Right.
But I think it was a good move to pull it when they did and to give him those 2 starts before the bye week.
30 seconds.
I always thought Rattler needed to give them a reason to put Shuck in until later in the year, and he gave them the reason to put him in, and then you get him, and that worked out perfectly because now they have more time to evaluate him.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us today. Guerry Smith, Seth Lewis, fantastic. I knew it was going to be a great panel. Fantastic to have both you guys back on the program. And we didn't get to the Pelicans, but, you know, it is what it is, right? All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a QR code on your screen right now. They'll take you to the WLAE-TV YouTube channel or to my website. I say it every week. We are so blessed with the number of ways that you can watch this program. WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV2, Pelican Sports, on the WLAE-TV YouTube channel, on my website. Choose the way you want to watch the show and never miss it. Or do what most people do. Set the DVR, you'll never miss the program. Catch me on the radio, 106.7 The Ticket. I'm on weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, we have an app, 106.7 The Ticket app. You can also listen to the 106.7 The Ticket website. TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, or other apps that you can catch the program as well. I want to thank the underwriters who make this show possible. We appreciate each and every one of those underwriters. There is no show without the underwriters, so thank you to the underwriters, and please support our underwriters. And of course, the folks here at WLAE-TV who produce our program do a fantastic job doing that as well. Rod Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, and the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Seth Lewis and Guerry Smith, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.
Today, we bring you the first part of our global broadcast exclusive conversation.
The streets of Tahrir have once again been filled
Key issues here at the United Nations Climate Change Conference remain unresolved.
Police are saying the protesters to move further and further away.
I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!
Weekdays at 12 on WLAE.
Hi, I'm Ann Kirkpatrick. I'm the Chief of Police of New Orleans. I have worn the badge in cities like Memphis, Chicago, and Oakland, California. But I have never seen officers so dedicated to improving their community and helping people as I have seen here in New Orleans. There's just something about this city that makes policing here so rewarding. If you want to